On the show, it's Retirement Compass Radio Show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and I have Tim Kulhanek in the Lincoln studio. Tim,
That's
how
me.
the heck are you?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I was thinking we could talk about some retirement planning today. What do you think?
That's the topic of the show. I think that's the kind of the idea behind this whole thing.
Is that the idea behind that beautiful studio you have there in Lincoln?
It's a big, beautiful studio.
It is.
For recording.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, this retirement thing used to mean slowing down. People were slowing down in retirement.
They were.
Now it seems like people are going go, go, go.
Yeah, I mean, what do they say? 60 is the new 50 or whatever it is. So, yeah, I mean, people, I think, in general are working longer, and part of that has shifted into they've shifted some of their more active retirement phase into a later stage of life. And, you know, it's one of those things where if you can do it, why wouldn't you do it? And so you want to make sure you have a plan that's going to be able to support a more active lifestyle for a longer period of time, which is why planning is required, right?
Well, sure. And that's why we have you to help us get this done. Yeah. What's the average age of the person that comes to see you? Let's be frank.
Yeah. Probably it's actually shifted lower over the years, which is especially recently, which is kind of interesting. But usually it's somebody that's around age 60. And so they're just about to retire. They're within, you know, we always talk about the retirement red zone. So if you're within 3 to 5 years, it's like you got to get in. Now is definitely the time. But really, you know, you should probably be working with somebody who can help you get your financial plan in order much sooner than that. So like I help friends who are my age or younger. You know, I've got siblings that are close to my age, and it's like, you know, we'd like to be able to retire someday. And it's really difficult when somebody comes in and they're 63 and they say, Tim, I want to retire in 2 years. How am I looking? But they haven't done a sufficient job saving, you know, because that takes a lot of work. It takes discipline. It takes strategy. It takes knowledge of the tax code, taking advantage of, I mean, there's people who come in here who could have been getting a match in their 401k and they haven't been, or they're not getting the full match, or their money was sitting in, like the classic example is a gal who came in and she worked for, you know, one of the hospitals here in town for 30 some years. And she had the same investments at 65 as she did when she was hired at age 30. Oh. And the problem with that is when she was hired at age 30, she didn't know what she was doing when it came to picking investments in a 401k. Not like 99.9% of, you know, of workers today, the American workforce, that's not what they specialize in. She was a nurse. And so she put it in a fund that she thought sounded good, stable value. Lo and behold, it turns out the stable value fund is basically a glorified savings account. In fact, it isn't very glorified because a lot of stable value funds today pay somewhere between 2 and 3% when you can get 4% on a money market. And so she was almost like, if you consider inflation, treading water, you know, more or less for the last 30 years. And the problem I'm illustrating here is there's not a lot I can do if you're at retirement. I can't really do anything about what's in the rearview mirror. And so, you know, I encourage folks, the sooner you can get in, the better. If you're 10 years out from retirement, great, let's meet. If you've already retired and you're just not 100% certain that what you're doing is the best that you can do, like all of us want better, right? We want a better house. We want a better car, a better dishwasher. It's like, you're supposed to be doing the work, dishwasher. Like in my house growing up, my dad was the professional dishwasher, you know? And, you know, there's always going to be something that we can probably be doing better when it comes to our finances. But, you know, somebody once said, you know, do you have enough confidence in what you're doing now to get a second opinion to know that, hey, you know what, there's a chance that there's going to be some things that are found, but I'm confident of what I'm doing now, that there's not going to be any like red flags or anything like that. And, you know, I think it's prudent to be inspecting what you're expecting, which is why I encourage folks to call and just like complimentary second opinion. Like there's no cost to talk. There's no cost for folks to come in and sit down with one of our experienced advisors and find out, like, are you doing the right things? Is there something better you could be doing? When folks come in and they're beyond retirement age, a lot of times it has to do with optimization and efficiency. So maybe they're not taking full advantage of different sections of the tax code that they could be taking advantage of, that, we can shave a few $1,000s off their tax bill. And that might not seem like a lot to some people. To others, it's like a few $1,000s. Are you kidding me? Like, I promise you, I'm telling you the truth. I can think of an example right now where some folks, just by shifting how they were giving money to some charitable organizations, we saved them, I think it was around $4,000 or $5,000 a year. That's every year, right? Just by being more efficient with the distribution methods. And so whether you're, in your 30s or 40s, let's say, and you're trying to plan for security, we got folks that kind of specialize in the younger demographic here at Stonebridge.
Oh, that's good.
Or if you're a pre-retiree within like that retirement red zone, that 5 to 7 years of retirement. That's really what the Stonebridge, like the genesis of the firm was. We wanted to serve retirees and kind of change the face of financial planning from financial product sales to like having the heart of an educator. Or if it's like, Tim, I've been retired, I'm 75, I'm just not 100% certain that I'm getting the best advice that I could possibly get. Or maybe I have investments, but I just have a bunch of stuff. I don't have a plan. It's just like I go in and I review and it says, oh, the stock market was up or it was down. Here's how you did. I'll see it again in 6 months. But there's no strategic planning sessions where we're sitting down for an hour or 2 hours to plot out the next 3 to 5 years, and for sure our strategy for the next 6 months of how we're going to mitigate your tax bill, how we're going to make sure that we're keeping more money in your pocket, and we're going to set not only you up for success, but if one of your goals is to leave money to the next generation, that we do that in the most optimal, efficient techniques and strategies that are available today. That'd be a reason that people would want to call Stonebridge and just get a second opinion.
Sure. Get it. Show some, put some light on it. Let it air out a little bit, these concerns. 866-295-5146. 866-295-5146. You're listening to the Retirement Compass radio show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems and Tim Kulhanek, one of the founders, and he is in the Lincoln office. Now, listen, I was thinking that the younger, I know, watch out. But the younger of the listeners, potentially, like you were mentioning, now these are going to be the upper of the Gen X and us, Boomer Juniors. I'm in the Boomer Junior category.
What does that mean, Boomer Junior?
It's the second half of the baby boomers.
Because it's 46 to 64, I believe.
Yeah, and that's a long spread. Somebody born in 1946, way different than somebody born in 1960.
Yep, no doubt.
So I like to call it the junior boomers.
Yep.
So if you still have kids at home and stuff like that, and you're building a business, a farm, whatever it is, and maybe that person doesn't have any life insurance, for example, and you still have children in school. Now that's one reason to get in and talk to Tim, because this thing could offer you more advantages as your life goes by. It's not just going to protect you if something happens to you. If you get caught in the if you get in an accident, caught in the auger, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, so here's how we help like those younger folks, because they got their 401k and they might think I'm set. But again, are you like, how much do you need to be saving? Mm-hmm. I met with a couple recently, and I think they were a little surprised when I told them that they needed to, that they were doing. I try to, have you ever heard of the sandwich technique, Jackie? Mm-hmm. It's like John Wooden. He was hailed for this. Like if there was, who John Wooden was?
No.
UCLA basketball coach, famous basketball coach.
Thank you.
Sandwich technique. He'd say, if a guy was messing up his crossover dribble, he'd be like, instead of saying, "Hey, you got to fix your crossover, it looks terrible," he'd say, "Hey, listen, that was a great rebound. I loved how you kept your elbows up when you brought the ball down, off the glass. One thing you could improve on is that crossover dribble. We're going to work on some technique to make sure that it's, at the level that it needs to be, to make sure that, you don't end up getting the ball stolen or whatever. So you have, hey, you did this great. Here's something we need to work on. And then you follow up with, but overall, I really like the progression that you've showed over the last few months. Something like that. You know what I mean?
That's good management right there.
So I kind of use that approach. And so with this couple, I said, look, you guys have done a great job saving. You have more saved for retirement than most people in your generation, right? Your age bracket. And if you go through how much each generation has saved for retirement on average, yes, baby boomers are the wealthiest generation, I think, ever. They still hold. This is a couple years ago. This is 2023.
It's trillions.
They own 52% of net wealth in America, over $76 trillion. So that includes, that's not just like investments, but that's like land and everything, right?
It's
business values. So, if you look up the average 401k balance, and Fidelity does a study on this every year by generation, like average baby boomer has less than 300,000 in their 401k. It's not very much. And the median is shocking. It's like the median is less than 100,000. So awful lot of people that they're like shockingly unprepared for retirement. This couple was doing great. And I said, hey, look, guys, you're doing great, but let's just use an objective metric to judge whether or not you're on the right track. So we're not about at Stonebridge, we're not about giving you just our opinion. Mm-hmm. Like we have opinions, but I don't want to base the advice I'm giving you off of what I think or what I feel. Like that doesn't really mean anything because, there's people who have been feeling there's going to be a massive market crash akin to the 2008 financial crisis market meltdown since 2008, and they've been wrong for going on 20 years. So I don't want to tell you how I feel. I want to look at the data. What does the data say? And so the data said, you're saving around 20% of your income, which is excellent. Good job on doing that. However, it's probably not enough for your situation and your lifestyle. So here are some ways that we can maybe save a little bit more. So for example, in this scenario, they were getting like $9,200 back every year from when they filed their taxes.
Wowzers.
Which means they're overpaying their tax bill throughout the year by $9,200, which is akin to giving the government an interest-free loan. And then some people say, well, that's my savings account. Well, that's like the worst savings account ever known to man because it's not that just you earn like 0.5%, like we used to joke with, a savings account at the bank. It's you earn zero. So it's not a savings account. And so I said, hey, here's a way that we could put more money away throughout the year is let's adjust your WF4, your withholdings. And then that $9,200 is in your pocket throughout the year. That easily funds another Roth IRA. And you're young, so we want to pay tax now, pay on the seed versus the harvest. Let's do another $7,000. And look, it improves your probability of success, which is just a mathematical test we're doing from maybe 43% to 52%. So just that small tweak. It's money you already have. I'm not telling you go get another job. I'm saying, hey, stop loaning your money to the government for free. Let's pursue it for your purposes. So what it comes down to, Jackie, since I know we're probably out of time, here's this. At the end of the day, there's really two types of people in this world. There's the types of people that kind of go through life as a passenger, right? And they're a victim of circumstances. Oh, yeah, I got to 65 and I went and talked to this financial guy and he said, I'm not quite set up for the retirement I was hoping for. That's a lot of people. Then there's others that hear something like this. They hear this message that I'm preaching week in and week out, and they say, you know what? Maybe I should do something about it. Get off the procrastination bandwagon and take action to change my circumstances to better suit my purposes and my objectives, not only now, but also, depending on your age, later in life. I encourage you to be like the latter instead of the former, and give us a call today. Jackie?
It's my turn. 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge. We're going to continue in just a sec.
Is your retirement being eaten up by financial termites like hidden fees, inflation, and avoidable taxes? Call today for a complimentary financial review so we can help you root out these retirement killers.
So when we started this whole show, we were talking about, for decades, Tim Kulhanek. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Retirement Compass Radio Show. I've got Tim Kulhanek here. Everybody, thought that retirement was just going to be slowing down. We're going to sit on the porch like Uncle Joe and drink some Folgers and watch the world go by.
Not a joke.
Right?
Serious.
Are you a Folgers drinker?
Joey.
Right. Slowing down,
Coffee.
slowing way down. So now, Tim, people are just picking up and going, aren't they?
They are. And so, what I want to talk about, kind of like the topic of today's show in that intro that I gave was, hey, it's a changing landscape, and the strategies for folks who have done a good job saving. So we already outlined in the first segment that, one, baby boomers hold the vast majority of wealth in this country. So if you think about it, this was as of the end of 2023. They had $76 trillion, and Gen X was at 37. So there's this great wealth transfer that we've been talking about, right? Where it's roughly $80 trillion will change hands over the next 20, 30 years.
80 trillion.
80 trillion. And so that's where it's coming from. It's in the baby boomer generation, which some of that was the silent previously. There's still 20 trillion in the silent generation. So there's...
Is there really 20 trillion?
Yeah, a huge amount of wealth that continues to transfer. Because then before that, you had the greatest generation and so on and so forth. So the idea is, what strategies and tools should these folks be using in order to be prepared for this great wealth transfer? And like, is there going to be a big tax impact? And so one of the things that's kind of interesting, let's talk about income for higher net worth individuals. So where does it come from? Depends on how you're looking, like it depends on where the resources are at. So folks that have almost a machine that's built to generate income, they live a pretty, I would say, comfortable lifestyle in retirement. And so what type of machines or tools are built to generate income? Well, property is one of them, real assets. So maybe they own real estate, you're just doing cash rent, or you got a flex lease or some sort of agreement where you were farming, you're no longer farming, or inherited farm ground. It could be rental properties. I know people who own like 70, 80, 100 plus rental properties across the state or in various, surrounding states. Those generate income through lease payments. So whether it's cash rent that you get, or your lease on the rental up in Havelock or wherever it's at.
Okay.
And so you combine that with Social Security, and people feel like they're doing pretty good. But the interesting thing is, if you look at spending as a percentage of wealth by kind of quintile, if you will, so like people who were upper quintile or upper earners versus lower earner versus middle earners. Upper earners actually have a lot more difficult time spending their money. And that could be just because it's a function of the good habits that were instilled in them and that they kind of followed to a T early on that created the scenario where they ended up as an upper earner and a higher net worth individual. It's tough to turn the dial the other way and go from the accumulation phase to the distribution or deaccumulation phase. And so they tend to spend a lower amount of their retirement earnings, or lower percentage every single year, even if they don't have a goal of leaving money to the next generation. So like there's a study that was done by a couple of professors from the American College for Financial Planning, which is kind of run by a PhD named Wade Pfau. So there's a lot of financial science behind this. This has been tested. This is more of an objective type of measurement. So there was a survey done, and they found that only roughly 34% of retirees were spending more than the income their portfolios generated. And as you went up in net worth, the percentage of their resources they were spending actually went down. And so part of it is a rational response to the unknowns for longevity, unknowns for healthcare costs. One of the things that created the problem for that couple I talked about in the first segment, that it was only showing about a 43% probability of success, was based on a $75,000, it's going to blow your mind. $75,000 is right now like the national average for in-home care per year.
Oh, my.
If you needed like a home health aide to come in. I mean, this is average. Somebody's going to listen to this and be like, well, I know somebody who was paying a lot more than that. Of course you do, right? But there's a bell curve here, and we're talking about what's inside the bell curve. This is the average, right in the middle. So inflate that at 5% a year. They're 33 now. By the time they're 90, it'd be over $1 million per person per year for that same level of care. So one of the things that's often overlooked is inflation. It harkens back to it's a legitimate, rational response to the unknown of longevity and healthcare costs. But there's solutions to that. So especially for higher net worth individuals who tend to have more of their resources located outside of tax qualified accounts. So it could be they sold a business, right? It could be that they have appreciated assets. It could be that they were just saving into a brokerage account because they didn't have access to some of the tools that more of our high income clients have access to today. And so for whatever reason, it's not in a 401k or an IRA. Well, that could be a really good thing when it comes to like wealth transfer and estate planning, as well as long-term care planning, because you can take somebody used to have a life insurance policy, and they said, yeah, I bought that when the kids were little. It was allegedly going to help supplement my retirement. I don't need it to supplement my retirement. I'm thinking about just cashing it out. And lo and behold, there's $200,000 in cash value or $400,000 in cash value inside this big life insurance policy. But the death benefit might only be like $600,000. And I say only because if you have a cash value of, let's say, $300,000 or $400,000, let's go with $400,000, and the death benefit is $600,000, the net amount at risk for that insurance company is only $200,000. Because if you die, they don't give you the death benefit or your beneficiaries the death benefit plus the cash value. They just give them the cash value.
I see.
Well, now this person's priorities have changed. They're spending less money because they're worried that they might live too long and they might get sick or need some sort of a care over an extended period of time. So they're not living at the lifestyle level that they would like to or they normally would. So they have lower overall satisfaction with their retirement. They're foregoing taking certain trips or doing certain things because of the unknown. Well, like, how do we address that? Again, there's tools that are available. So what we do, and I'm outlining not verbatim, but essentially what I did with the case the other day. I said, hey, you guys don't need this life insurance anymore. You've got sufficient resources. If one of you passes away, the other one's going to be fine. There's really not that much life insurance anyway. It's like a $200,000 policy because that's the only thing that this person would get beyond the cash value that you could access anyway. So if you needed long-term care, you've got access to $400,000 in my scenario. The death benefit would go away if you had to cash this out because you needed it for care. Why don't we roll that $400,000 to a life insurance policy that allows you to become the beneficiary while you're alive? Well, wait a minute. How does that work? Life insurance, you have to die to get the death benefit. Not exactly. So how it works, Jackie, is they roll it to a new life insurance policy. They still have a primary beneficiary that's their spouse and then their kids and purse striptease. We've got to make sure that we're setting this up correctly from an estate planning perspective because your will won't dictate where that money goes. The beneficiary designation form will.
Okay.
But what we do is we add what's called an accelerated death benefit rider to it. So it's a special type of rider that is qualified under the 2006 Pension Protection Act as a qualified long-term care rider, which means that if you need long-term care, right, you can start drawing on this death benefit. So now you have access to, in my example, the $600,000 tax-free to be paid out over a number of years to provide you the assistance you need tax-free. Again, I can't stress that enough. It's tax-free to pay for your long-term care needs. And then a lot of them will have like an extended benefit rider where it might pay $600,000. If you use all of that, then they might double that. And there's another $600,000 that comes out of the insurance company's pocket if you continue to need care beyond like the first, let's say, like 2 years or 4 years, however we set it up. We can customize it however we want to.
Nice.
The point is, these are solutions that then put to rest the concern of, I can't spend this money because what if I live too long? What if I, end up needing care later on and I don't want it to wipe out my spouse? No, we've taken care of that. We've put that concern to bed. We have secured your financial future. So we're now providing you with what I like to call a license to spend so you can go out and do the things you want to do, knowing that if you die 30 years from now peacefully in your sleep, having never needed any sort of healthcare assistance, you never had to pay for something you hope you never used, and all that money is going to your loved ones tax-free.
Tax-free. That is the thing that we should say the loudest. Tax-free. I mean, this is a winner chicken dinner all the way around.
It truly is. That's what we do here. Okay?
Yeah.
Come on.
866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge, 866-295-5146. Stonebridge Wealth Systems. You could also find us on YouTube that way if you'd like to.
Definitely
watch the
YouTube.
show.
I've got a sweet shirt on. You want to see it?
Yes, you do.
It's another hand-me-down.
It is. It's like a Father's Day shirt.
Oh, well, it came from my father-in-law because he outgrew all of his shirts, so now I get to wear them. It's great. I don't have to shop.
It's a dad shirt for sure.
See?
So check us out on YouTube. It's Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and that's the name of the YouTube channel. So please look it up and follow it and give us whatever they say. Give us a like this page, like this content. I'm not a YouTuber.
Use our QR code, go to our tax calculator, find out what your potential total tax burden is going to be in retirement. Like there's so many ways that you can start planning today. It doesn't cost you anything. We have a lot of free tools, like we're giving away stuff, so go use it. But then like a plan without execution is really just a wish. Mm-hmm. So you can't just like use the tool and be like, oh, wow, that would be terrible if that happened. Like, well, now let's take the next step. That's when you want to give us a call. Go to our website, stonebridgeiwm.com. Use the Contact Us page. You're going to be able to get a hold of one of our staff members who will put you in touch with one of our experienced advisors to make sure that you get that complimentary consultation. You'll put in there that you heard us on the radio, which office you're located closest to, and yeah, it's going to be good. Yes,
and speaking of the experienced advisors, you usually hear them on the show or see them on the videos. It's not like they're hiding in the background or something. It is usually Mr. Gove and Tim doing the show, but we have had Mr. Marduk on recently, haven't we? And Mr. Noctegal and the other Mr. Gove. So you get to have a glance and a glimpse into what goes. But it's a great firm, and they're growing, and they're lots of fun. 866-295-5146, and lots of experience. All right. We are going to jump and be right back. Are we going to talk more healthcare costs? We could do on the Retirement Compass radio show.
As Americans, we strive for better.
from a better house to a better career to a better life for our children and grandchildren. Better has become the American way. When it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? Does it mean more income, a flexible lifestyle, better solutions? A better retirement begins with a financial plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better.
Now, this is very interesting, why asset location may matter more than allocation, and I want Tim to explain this to you. Retirement Compass radio show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems, located all over. If you're in the Midwest, they can help you. But the office is in Kearney, Grand Island, Lincoln, Omaha. Let's see, what am I missing?
Kearney, Grand Island, Lincoln, and Omaha.
There we go.
Got them.
And you can reach any of the offices with this number, 866-295-5146. Tim, what do you mean by asset location may matter more than asset allocation?
It's a good question. So most of the time if you've ever gone in and met with a financial advisor, there's usually some sort of kind of salutation. There's a greeting, welcome in, really excited to have you here. What going on in your life that, has brought you in today? What are your goals? Those are important conversations to have. But I would say most of the conversations probably focused on the quantitative side, which is, okay, well, do you have money in the bank? Do you have CDs? Do you have IRAs, 401ks, 403bs? How much are you putting in? How much do you make? What are your expenses? That's the thrust of the conversation. Right. And then in meeting two, you're going to get maybe a report from the company that they work for because it's a proprietary system, or maybe it's Morningstar or a quantity analysis is one that we're familiar with. It really focuses on the investment side, right? Here's how your investments have been performing. And, I did this quick analysis and compared your Edward Jones accounts to what we, would propose that you utilize here at our firm. And, you're overpaying by a little bit right now. But more importantly, you're underperforming. And, you've only been doing 7%. We could have gotten 8.5%, 9%, whatever it is, Mm-hmm. That's typically the way that conversation plays out. And a lot of you hearing this right now, you're like, yeah, it sounds pretty familiar. That's how, I got to be with the advisor I'm with right now, is it's based off of market performance. And I want to have a rocket ship that just, zooms every year when it comes to my investments. But the reality is the majority of investors underperform the market. There's a classic study I often cite, which is the Dalbar study. It's the annual quantitative analysis of investor behavior. And it finds that the average investor, retail investor, so the kind of the do-it-yourselfer, and even people that work with advisors, a lot of advisors actually kind of exacerbate this problem, but they get about half the return of the equity markets. So if they're a stock investor, they might get about half the return of the S&P over a long period of time, and they get less than half of the return of the bond market. And the question is why? And it's because they're making poor decisions with their money. They're letting their emotions impact their investment decision-making process. They're buying high and they're selling low, and then they kind of rinse and repeat. So that approach doesn't work really good. The thing I have the least amount of control over is the stock market, right? And so why do I focus more on things like asset location versus allocation? Well, because if I ran a financial plan for you, which we're going to do when you folks come in, you're going to get the Retirement Compass process. We're going to do a written financial plan. So it's going to actually explain to you when you should do what, right? So there's so many people, they retire and they're basically flying by the seat of their pants. And if they need money, they just call up their broker and say, send me some money. Now we're going to have a strategic approach that systematically distributes money from the right account at the right time, meets all of the required distributions, hopefully minimizes them by implementing a tax strategy. It's going to be quite holistic, if you will.
I like it.
But if I didn't change your investments at all, I can still get you more money. Okay, now I don't know how Keith's going to feel about this because I got to quantify that. What are you going to give him more money? What do you mean by that? You just charge lower fees? No. In fact, I could probably charge a higher fee and you'd still end up with more money. Why? Tax efficiency. How? Asset location is the first step. So most people, what they do is they kind of just pick some mutual funds and then they hold those funds kind of in all their accounts. It could be the same fund in every single account. And so if they want to be 60-40 and they got $1 million and they have 3 accounts, one's a traditional IRA, one's a Roth IRA, and one's a brokerage account. And each of them have $333,334. So it's all equal, right? They're going to be 60-40 a lot of the time in every one of those buckets. So I have it 60% stock, 40% bond. Overall, if I add it all up, I've got $600,000 in stocks. I got $400,000 in bonds. I am, in fact, a 60-40 moderate risk investor. Okay. I can do better than that without changing your investments at all. We're going to keep all the same funds, and I'm going to get you more money long term. The returns are going to be the same. We've got a white paper where we can explain this to you, but essentially there's taxable, tax deferred, tax free. I want my highest growth, lowest efficiency assets in my tax free bucket. I want my low to moderate growth, highest efficient assets in my taxable bucket, and everything else goes in the tax deferred bucket. So essentially what I've done is I've just shifted where I'm taking risk, which means my tax free bucket grows faster than my tax deferred bucket and my taxable bucket, which means at the end of the day, I have more money left over because I used a more efficient approach to investing.
Efficiency would start with that phone call, 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge. We're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill next.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
The show is the Retirement Compass Radio Show, and I have Stonebridge, and I'm Jackie, and I have Tim from the Stonebridge office in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, Tim, we're going to talk about the OBBBBB, the One Big Beautiful Bill
Act. Yes. So
what? Yeah, can you melt down some of these facts for us?
Yeah, so here's what you need to know about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It is definitely big. So there was like 940 pages to the final bill, around 1,000. And it took 15 hours for the Senate clerks to read through all of the pages. That was one of the kind of stalling techniques that they used to try to, the folks that were opposed to it. And so 15 hours. And what I want to encourage people to do is just take 15 minutes, give us a call, and just schedule a 15-minute, no cost, no obligation, kind of discussion, 15-minute phone call, kind of a checkup from the neck up to get your questions answered and answers questioned on what impact will the One Big Beautiful Bill Act have on me. And I'm here to tell you, folks, it's going to have an impact. Here's what makes this bill so complex. It adjusts. So the number one thing that we need to know that it does, so it's law, signed July 4th, 2025 by President Trump. It extends the Trump tax cuts, so to speak, so the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act rates. It extends those and makes them permanent. So, in other words, instead of 12% going to 15, 22 to 25, 24 to 28, so on and so forth, we're going to be living for the foreseeable future with the current bracket system. And that's very good for folks with money in pre-tax accounts because it extends the window of opportunity to take advantage of very low rates. Right now, in one of the lowest tax regimes in history, right now, middle income quintile taxpayers pay marginal. They're at about the 22% bracket. In the year 2000, 25 years ago, they were paying 28%.
Wow.
So it's almost a 30% drop from 25 years ago. So rates are at historic lows. Now, what does permanent means? It means until the next Congress changes it. So nothing's permanent in Washington. Many presidents have come in and they've raised taxes. I think Bush 1, there was a tax increase, even though, during the campaign, it was read my lips, that didn't work out. Why? Because the math wasn't mathing. They don't want to miss payments to things like Social Security. So there's been several different times that taxes have increased. On average, once you get a tax decrease or tax cut, those usually last about 10 to 12 years before you see tax brackets go back up. And so, depending on when you're counting from, you could go from 2017 and say 2018 was the first year. So 12 years would be like 2030. Or you could go 10 years to 12 years from 2025 and say 2035. But inevitably, rates eventually go back up because everything in Washington is written in pencil. So what does it do? It extends those brackets, but it also increases the standard deduction. So we put together a white paper of like the 10 most impactful provisions within the bill that you can give us a call. Jackie will give you the number at the end of the segment on how to get a copy of that white paper in your hands. Well, the first thing is the standard deduction. So the standard deduction was supposed to be $15,000 for single, $30,000 for married filing jointly this year. That's going up to $15,750 for single, $31,500 for married filing jointly. Now they retained the additional 65 plus or blind additional deduction. So like this bill overwhelmingly favors seniors. It really does, right? So they get this big deduction. So addition to the 31.5, they'll have another $2,000 per person, or $2,000 for a single filer, or $1,600 per person for a married couple filing jointly. So there's $3,200 added to the 31.5. Now here's the big change. If your income is $150,000 or lower for a married couple filing jointly, you'll get an additional $6,000 per person. That's an additional nice. $12,000. You're going to be pushing $50,000 of standard deduction. That's wild. But there's a phase out. So for every dollar over $150,000 you earn, it reduces the deduction, the bonus deduction by 6%. So if you're $100,000 over, it basically wipes it out. So that's one new provision. There's a lot of misinformation about this. They say there's no tax on tips. That's not the case. There's an additional deduction. You can deduct up to $25,000 from 2025 through 2028. Both these provisions I just mentioned, the additional deduction for tax on tips, the additional deduction for seniors, as well as the additional deduction for tax on overtime pay, all of those phase out at the end of 2028. So unless they're extended, those will go away all on their own. This is one of the reasons why it's really tough to score bills for like the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, because oftentimes they'll put these, like, think about when they scored the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, those rates were supposed to sunset. So they assumed that in 2026, rates would go back up. So it wasn't as, well, what do? They end up extending them, right? And so and every Congress does this with a lot of different bills. Child tax credit, max credit is now $2,200 per child. The refundable portion doesn't change. It's still $1,700. But there's a phase out as well for almost all of these. This is what makes it so difficult. Auto loan interest deduction, you can deduct up to $10,000 of annual interest on new loans between 2025 and 2028 for vehicles where the final assembly was in the United States. So it doesn't have to be soup to nuts. It's just the final assembly. And it's reduced by 20% of income above $100,000 single, $200,000 married filing jointly. Here's another big one is the SALT cap. So SALT is an acronym, state and local tax. And so folks that were in higher tax states, which Nebraska has really made a lot of headway in reducing our state tax burden. We don't tax Social Security anymore. They've lowered the corporate income tax. They've lowered personal income tax rates. But it used to be that you could only deduct up to $10,000. Well, that cap has been lifted to $40,000. And I believe that's also through 2028. So again, a lot of these have some sort of phase out, not only phase out for income, but also sunset on them. We'll see if they get extended or not. There's going to be a decision to be made, a big decision to be made in 2028. But now that's $40,000. So more people are actually going to, despite these additional benefits for seniors for the standard deduction, most seniors don't itemize the way it is. So they're going to continue to not itemize, but more folks that are still actively employed are going to itemize, because now think of folks in California, New York, New Jersey, some of these higher tax states, and this is your property taxes, this is your state income taxes. There is a way that you visit with your CPA on this to include, like, let's say Florida, you don't have a state income tax, but you want to account for the sales tax and stuff. But you can deduct up to $40,000. So these are some big provisions. But understanding, navigating this, there's like a lot of landmines that stand between you and effectively utilizing the provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We've got this white paper that can get you started on understanding. But more importantly, our sophisticated tools we use from a tax planning perspective as of this recording. They're updated. They're ready to go. So what we want to do is we want to have you come in and create a new tax map. So maybe you came to one of our workshops in the past. You heard us on the radio and you've heard us talk about tax maps. What theirs are designed to do is show you your income tax situation in an illustrative way that you've never seen before. We'd like to update that for you to include the provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Again, no cost, no obligation. So you can see, okay, are there new opportunities that have been open for me? Maybe I need to use up that standard deduction, so I need to lock in some gains. I could realize more gains. I could maybe pay zero tax, lock in a capital gain, and do something that I didn't think I would otherwise be able to do because I didn't have the resources to do it. We've freed this up. We could potentially free that up by making the necessary adjustments as part of a reaction to the provisions of this bill.
Wow. I'm glad that you have the white paper available so folks can get started on that. And do they initiate the distribution of that with the phone call?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you go to the website and schedule a meeting, again, 15 hours to read the bill, I'm asking for 15 minutes, no cost, no obligation, 15-minute phone call. Mm-hmm. Or if you're ready to just no, Tim, I know I want the tax map updated. You did that for me a while back, or you talked about it at a workshop I attended. Just give us a call and schedule the appointment. We'll get you in touch with one of our experienced advisors who can put that together for you so you understand how this is truly going to impact you and how to make sure you're maximizing these more, let's say, generous provisions, especially for folks as they reach retirement age.
Right, and that's 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. Now, how much time did you spend reading the darn thing?
I haven't read 940 pages. I'm not that interested, but I got a team behind me. So we had a team that's been combing through this of CPAs, CFPs, CFAs. We want to know how it's going to impact our clients.
Sure.
So we've got a lot of resources that we've been leveraging. I have spent a lot of time reading analysis pieces of the bill. You could go to places like, the Tax Policy Center and some of these different, nonpartisan type of organizations, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, you name it, and learn more about some of the provisions in this bill that are going to have the biggest impact on the folks that we serve.
Sure. It's just amazing to me how much pork is actually in the thing. They have to get it passed every single, both the House and the Senate, everybody wants their little part of it.
Yeah, why does it have to be 940 pages is what I'd like to know.
How do they actually enact it? 15 hours, that's just reading it.
Yeah.
I don't know how they make these things happen.
So here's the thing. When they passed the Secure Act, that was between 300 and 400 pages. They passed it in December 19th of 2019, or December 18th, 2019. It took IRS until July 24th, 2024, or July 18th, 2024. Yeah, I think that was right. 4.5 years before they actually came out with the final regs on how they were going to actually enforce the law. So that was 300 pages, or is going to be 12 years before we know on this thing. There's a lot to know, how IRS is actually going to, how are custodians going to implement these, they call them Trump accounts or these Invest in America accounts. Those aren't available until next year, 2026. How are the custodians going? There's a new application that has to be created. You don't get a deduction if you put money in as an individual, but a business can. It's there's so much nuance with this. It really, really complicates things.
It really does. All right, let's do this. I'm going to hand out the number again, and then we're going to go to our questions and answers after this. To reach Stonebridge, 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. See you in just a second.
Did you ever think your retirement would be shared with our government? It's true. Your traditional 401k, IRA, pension, or similar retirement accounts are like a partnership with the IRS. Simply put, they want their tax dollars, and you have them. With our latest tax calculator, you can plug in your own numbers while sitting at home. To find out what your future tax liability could be, scan the QR code or go to stonebridgetaxbill.com.
It's questions and answers time. It's kind of the mailbag, I guess we could call it.
Yeah.
Here on the big program.
Got mail.
This is the Retirement Compass radio show. I've got Tim Kulhanek, and you're going to love all these, I think, Tim. We've got a good mailbag for you today to answer.
That's why I'm getting hydrated, so I'm ready.
Are you getting hydrated? All right, perfect. Let's see. We have a couple here debating whether to put $200,000 into an annuity for guaranteed income or leave it in their brokerage account for growth. Now, these folks like the idea of security, but they don't want to lose control of the money. Lose control. How do they weigh the pros and cons of an annuity when someone still wants growth and flexibility?
Yeah, it depends on where their other money is, right? So, if that's all of your money you have saved, I would say it's probably a pretty bad idea to put it all in an annuity and lock it up. For if it's an income annuity, you're basically saying, I'm not going to touch this until I start drawing income. Depends on their age. So let's just say I'm going to paint a picture of a potential scenario.
Okay.
Somebody comes in and I'm going to assume that this is IRA money too, because if it's non-IRA money, it probably makes less sense from a tax efficiency standpoint. I can get into why, but let's say it's $200,000 in an IRA, but they have another $1.3 million in a 401k that they're about to retire. They're going to roll that out. They're going to retire in 5 years. They've also got $200,000 in a Roth IRA. Well, if they're over 59 and a half, what I'd probably do is roll, and this is not specific advice, mileage may vary, but roll all or a portion of their 401k over to a rollover IRA through an in-service rollover if it's allowed by the company.
Okay.
And then I'm going to start focusing on a tax mitigation strategy, because if they're not 63 yet, I don't have to worry about income-related monthly adjustment amounts or IRMAs, which impact the amount, the price you pay for your Medicare Part B and D. And it can get really expensive, over $600 a month per person if you're married filing jointly. And so you do that, then I can start implementing a tax mitigation strategy, which may or may not include Roth conversions, because I think even though the One Big Beautiful Bill Act just passed, I still believe that the biggest threat to retirement income security for retirees, and certainly pre-retirees today, is the threat of rising taxes. And sometimes those are stealth taxes. It's things like they just raise the IRMA rate, so they just increase your, not necessarily your tax bill, but your fees and your surcharges that you pay along the way. Medicare premiums would be included in there as a kind of a fee, right?
Right.
And so now I'm looking at, do I have cash available to pay for my Roth conversions? Right. So right away you can tell a lot of places you go, they'd be like, you want an annuity? Boy, do I have a deal for you. I'm going to sell you an annuity. And that's just not the way we do things at Stonebridge. It's not like, oh, well, we're order takers, so come in and tell us what product you want to buy and we'll just put your money in it. What if it's not the right thing for you? What if it's not? What if it's? If I'm going to fulfill my fiduciary duty of making sure I put your interest ahead of my own, right? A moral, legal, ethical obligation to do that. Well, then I darn well better make sure that I understand your entire financial picture to make sure that what I'm doing over here in this bucket of money isn't going to negatively impact everything else over here, whether it's your estate plan, your healthcare strategy, your tax plan, you name it. And so I want to make sure that we can mitigate your tax bill in the future. I want to make sure that you've got the cash available, the money available to play. You got to pay to play, right?
Yes.
Money available to pay the tax bill when the tax bill comes due. So if we decided to do Roth conversions, which we may or may not, again, not specific advice on that, we've got the ability to pay the bill, and you don't have to figure out, I got to borrow money to pay my tax bill. We don't want that. Only after I figure out things like when you're going to start drawing Social Security, right? At what age, making sure you're retired, making sure that you've either retired or you've reached full retirement age, so you no longer have, you're not subject to the annual earnings test. I know what account we're going to draw from, how much money you need in retirement, what you want to do while you're retired, where you're going to live, what the tax consequences of living in that location are. So, for example, a lot of people will move to Florida and they no longer have a state income tax. They might go to Arizona with a flat tax, Texas no tax, like all these different, South Dakota no tax, all these different variables. We have to weigh all of them. Then and only then can I make a recommendation on whether or not you could do this annuity and feel good about it. Now, in the scenario the picture I painted, I think that there's a good chance that we could justify it, because it's like, hey, if we could take 18%, this is literally a case that happened, where we could have taken 18% of this person's retirement accounts, put it into an income annuity, which again, according to the folks at the American College for Financial Planning, folks that have guaranteed sources of income like that of a pension or an annuity will spend on average double every year in retirement versus those that hold their wealth in a different form, which would be just more like the growth approach, right? And like a brokerage account. So it's not that they have more money that allows them to spend double. It's that they hold their wealth in a different form, which is that of guaranteed income. So if I know that's the case, I can kind of give them a license to spend by encouraging them to, hey, you can spend this because it's guaranteed income for life. I can probably justify using a tool like an annuity in that scenario because I know that you've got 1.3 million over here in a 401k that can continue to grow, and we're going to start converting it to a Roth IRA possibly. And if we do that, we want the Roth money to be our biggest growth engine, right? So remember I said asset location matters. Wow. So where you're taking your risk is key. I'm going to make sure I'm taking more risk in the right bucket, which happens to be the tax-free bucket, and everybody's happy, right? So the one that wanted more growth, we're going to do that, and we're going to do it in this bucket. The one that wants more security, let's do that too, because in the situation I mentioned earlier, he going to take an 18% of his retirement account, put it into a income annuity. He was going to retire in 8 years, let it cook for 8 years, and between Social Security and the annuity, it was going to cover all of their base expenses at the household level, and it's guaranteed for life. Not only is his Social Security, as far as we know, but the annuity as well. And so any of their other money, so in other words, the other 80% or so, 82%, is purely discretionary at that point, right? Because we did a good job of planning. And so that's a very complex, long-winded way of saying I can definitely help you. My team can absolutely help you if this is your situation. We just got a few more questions we want to ask, and we're going to put together a custom tailored plan, kind of our best ideas and one comprehensive solution that's really truly is personalized specifically to you and your goals, your wants, your dreams. And that's what you're going to get when you come in and visit with one of our team members. Great.
To come in and visit with one of the team members, use this phone number, 866-295-5146. Stonebridge Wealth Systems is who you're going to be calling, 866-295-5146. All right. Both of these folks are in their 70s and healthy now, but wondering, Mr. Kulhanek, if they should consider long-term care policy or tapping home equity later would be enough to cover any future care for long-term care. Their house is paid off, worth about $450,000. Mm-hmm. How should somebody decide between buying a long-term care insurance policy or relying on home as a safety net?
Kind of where their assets are positioned. So same answer as last time. What is the landscape here? Taxable, tax deferred, tax free. How much do you have in each bucket? What do you want to do in retirement? Where are your goals? Do your kids want to inherit your house? Do you have a special needs child that still lives with you? Do you have a child that happens to, live a life of, being, minimalist, right? And they're going to need a place to live because it's a 45-year-old that still lives in your house. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure that there's a place to take care of them, right? There's all these different considerations that are going to go into the decision-making process. But at the end of the day, you have to use the right tool for the right job. If sometimes when I'm out in the garage and I'm trying to get something out the deep freeze, so I open the deep freeze up, and I may or may not have made homemade ice cream recently because I got this White Mountain ice cream freezer that if you've never had homemade ice cream out of a White Mountain, quit cheating yourself and just go get one, okay?
Okay, all right.
It's amazing. You hand crankers out there, why do you like vanilla soup?
Yeah,
with grit in it.
Yeah,
it makes such a difference. So when I shut it, sometimes it vacuum seals so tight that I can't get it back open. So my workbench is out there, and I just go grab a screwdriver, I stick it in there, I pry it open, and it comes open really easily. I can't open it with my hands. You've got to get something to break that seal. If I used a hammer, I could probably get into it, but I'm going to have to buy a new deep freeze.
Right.
It's not what I'm looking for. So I have to use the right tool for the right approach. These folks are in their 70s, so the ship is kind of sailed once you get into your 70s on using life insurance, which is my favorite approach to covering long-term care with a hybrid life policy. So here's what I'm going to look at. I'm first going to look at what is the landscape, where are the resources located, how much do you have, and let's say I'm going to build a scenario that helps my story here. So let's say they happen to have this annuity they bought years ago. It's a variable annuity. They were going to use it for retirement, but they just don't need it anymore. That things changed. Their Social Security is strong enough that combine that with, she was a teacher, so she's got, school retirement through, Nebraska Public Employee Retirement System or NPERS. They just don't need this money, so they're just going to leave it to their kids. And it's got, they put $100,000 in, and it's worth $350,000. What's going to happen if they leave it to their kids is their kids are going to have to pay income tax on $250,000. Income tax. There's no step up in basis, and it is not a capital gain. What if I told you that I could potentially wipe out the taxable gain completely by converting that from a taxable event in a variable annuity to a qualified long-term care annuity qualified under the 2006 Pension Protection Act that allows you to use distributions that are still based off of LIFO, last in, first out. So those gains are going to come out first. And if you ever needed any sort of long-term care, that money is going to go directly to you as reimbursement for those costs, but it's going to be tax-free now because we used a qualified long-term care annuity. There's so many solutions, Jackie. I know that we're running out of time, so I won't go any further, but these are all reasons why if what you have is that kind of financial junk drawer, like the kitchen junk drawer where you got a bunch of stuff, but it's not organized. It's just like keys, rubber bands, twisty ties, stapler, I don't know what else. If that's your financial life, you've got stuff, but you need it organized like most people, that would be a reason you'd want to give us a call, and Jackie's going to give you the number.
866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. See you next week, Tim.
See ya.